Subramanian Swamy now joining us live, a man, of course, who has actively gone ahead and pursued cases against the Home Minister, of course, the 2G case. Mr. Swamy, would you first and foremost say that this is a bigger blow than what you had hit him with over the 2G case in court?
Well, this has been on since 2009. Mine has been only on for last 4 months. And let the court summer vacations be over. And is not only on 2G, but on Aircel Maxis and Hashimpura genocide. So there are many cases coming against him.
Okay.
And I'm afraid the government will sink with him if they don't get rid of him.
Oh, well, the government is definitely not letting go of him. You know, the kind of reactions, Mr. Swamy, that we are getting in from the government, Mr. Khurshid making it amply clear, there is no question, and I quote, there is no question of Mr. Chidambaram resigning because this is not a criminal case. In your opinion, what are the charges? Can they actually lead, what kind of finger pointing can you do against Mr. Chidambaram at this point of time, because they are hinging it on electoral technicalities?
Electoral technicalities,
yes.
Fraud, coercion, a number of these 29 charges, of which 27 have been upheld as prima facie correct. These will lead to criminal prosecution immediately after. This is an election petition. His seat is going to be declared vacant. And after that, the authorities in the state government, headed by Ms. Jayalalitha, have the right immediately to register criminal cases against him. Here is a Home Minister being prima facie held guilty of fraud. And if the Prime Minister is going to defend him, then shame on the Prime Minister.
What kind of fraud did he commit? You've always spoken your mind. What is it that you are in the know of? What kind of electoral fraud?
You need the 29... I will tell you what I am in the know of, which will be proved in the trial. That is, that Mr. Chidambaram lost on the first count. Then he asked for a second count. That too he lost. Third count, he produced another machine which they said was hiding somewhere. And then finally, out of the blue, the returning officer issues a victory certificate without the knowledge of the other candidate. This has never happened in the history. And there are telephone records which show that telephone calls went from Delhi, and he was Home Minister at that time, Mr. Chidambaram. And telephone calls went from Chennai, which is the Mr. Karunanidhi as Chief Minister. And I don't know what kind of threats they must have issued to the returning officer to give this bogus victory certificate. That is the question, and all this is subject to criminal prosecution subsequently.
Just to be the devil's advocate, and I know many of the charges that you've leveled earlier have actually, many of them have been proven to be false. But what you're suggesting, and what has been suggested, also brings into the question the way elections are conducted in India. It also brings into question the role, at least, of the men of the Election Commission. So then this is not only about the Home Minister, it's also about free and fair elections being conducted and being controlled by certain politicians who are very powerful.
Yes, it is true that we have booth capture and all kinds of things. But here is the Home Minister, and he is supposed to protect the country, and he is himself engaging in fraud, coercion, cheating, all kinds of other charges. This is intolerable. If you don't stop this, then I'm afraid you might as well say goodbye to law and order in this country.
Now, you have been, of course, one of the first people to come out and say that, you know, he has to go. Jayalalitha has come in. Mr. Gadkari has been very quick off the block. He said that the Prime Minister should immediately sack his Home Minister. Take us through exactly, how do you see this panning out? What will the BJP do? What will you do if the Prime Minister doesn't listen to you and the Congress doesn't listen to you?
Well, if the Prime Minister doesn't listen to us, he is cooking his own goose, because this will become a major issue in the elections. They won't be able to show their face in the elections. They don't understand the anger in the country today. It is not a question of my being vindicated or Mr. Gadkari being vindicated or Jayalalitha being vindicated. We have raised the voice of the public, and it's for the Prime Minister now to show that he is an upright, honest man, that in the end he will not sell everything. that he will certainly will have somewhere along the line a comeuppance if he continues to do this.
And would you say that there is already a little bit of political formations that we can see here? Mr. Swamy, Jayalalitha, you, the BJP, is it just a coincidence that the three of you are the first three people to raise their voice as far as demanding Chidambaram's resignation?
Well, I'm already part of the NDA, so there is no surprise that Mr. Gadkari and I are on the same wavelength.
Yes.
As far as Jayalalitha is concerned, she has always been very clear about Chidambaram. From the very beginning, I have been discussing with with her for many years. I think as early as 1994 or 1995, she told me that there cannot be a worse specimen of a politician than Mr. Chidambaram. So, I don't think she had any illusions about him, which the media had for a long time. The man is guilty of not only these, but a large number of other charges. One by one will come out. Even in Air India, you will find his name will come up.
Now, take us through exactly how do the next few weeks shape up for Mr. Chidambaram. We've seen the heckling, we've seen the boycott in Parliament, we've seen actually Mr. Chidambaram keep a rather low profile of late. Is it because he already knows that there is clear pressure that is building and more bad news that is to come?
Well, you see, you can always win a battle and lose a war. In the case of Mr. Chidambaram, he might stick on as minister, but he will be so thoroughly discredited that he will take the government down with him. The fact is that after vacations are over for the courts, which is in end of June, there is a question of the orders being pronounced on what happened, or orders on the question of the 2G spectrum matter, where the lower court has already said that I have proved that Mr. Chidambaram and Mr. Raja made the decision together. The court erroneously said I have to also prove that he had a criminal intent, which in the Prevention of Corruption Act, Section 13, I don't have to. And there is already a High Court judgment to say that. And that's why I've gone straight to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has to pronounce on that. Then this ASL Maxis, where he has allowed an Indian company to be sold 100% to a Malaysian company, when the law says it can't be more than 74%.
Yes.
And he allowed all kinds of fraud. And he claimed in the Parliament that it was cleared in March. It was not. Now we got the documents. And he's guilty of even breach of privilege, of telling a lie to Parliament. So yeah, a number of counts, I see Mr. Chidambaram as a great embarrassment for the UPA.
At the same time, you've tried to haul him to court. You've had your exposés against him. You've been leading this sort of a crusade against him. He's still in office. What prevents the Congress from saying that, okay, this is another charge, it has to be investigated, and he stays on till anything is proven? Right now, the case also hasn't even started as far as this election case is concerned. That is what the Congress is coming out and saying. So do we see him actually being only under pressure but not stepping down?
Well, you see, first of all, this is not just simply something for trial beginning. They have prima facie found that there is evidence in these charges. Now, prima facie is sufficient for Mr. Raja to have to resign. He had to resign for what reason? Because of this fact. In fact, at that time even the court cases hadn't started. The CAG had found him prima facie guilty.
Yes.
Now here a court, and that to a high court, has in Tamil Nadu, has found him guilty prima facie. So let them, I have no difficulty if the UPA wants to continue Mr. Chidambaram. It will, by this account, I don't think the UPA in the next election will get even 25 seats of Lok Sabha. If they keep on hanging on to this, they won't have a face to show in the crowd. What happened in Amethi and Raebareli this time? All MLAs have been lost in the home constituency of Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi.
Okay, then let me throw your question back to you. Let me throw that back to you. Mr. Swamy, you know the allegation that is made, and which you also reiterated, something that is known amongst circles, and and is talked about how the Home Minister might have dialed a few numbers, made a few calls, influenced a few people. Then why couldn't the same thing have been done in Raebareli? Why is it that the Home Minister is only being questioned over the fact that he did something for himself, The Congress party could have used the services to at least save its face in Raebareli in that matter, if you think that election agents can be really turned around in this manner.
Well, you see, you can always do it in one election, and that to a home minister of his own constituency. But you can't do it for 7 MLA seat in one parliamentary constituency or 14 MLA seats in one parliamentary constituency, when in fact you are not against one opponent, you are against several opponents, and all of them very powerful. So in the case of Ms. Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi and the Congress party in UP, the only hope they had was the electronic voting machine, but unfortunately I had gone to the Delhi High Court and got a verdict that the electronic voting machine can be tampered with, and they've asked them to produce a voter receipt, which the Election Commission is now grappling with. So therefore, just because Mr. Chidambaram was able to do it in faraway Shivaganga, it's far more difficult to do it in New Delhi and in UP. It's just next door to Delhi. That is the difference. Are you still of the opinion that EVMs can be tampered with? Of course, I've gone to the Supreme Court saying that the Election Commission is not implementing my demand for a voter receipt. And the court has fixed 6th of August for a hearing and asked the Election Commission. No, be that as maybe, I agree with you that there has to be a physical trail. I agree with that argument that there has to be a physical trail. What I'm asking you is that, how would you believe that an EVM can be tampered with? Because, you know, there are conspiracy theories that say that they can be tampered with a phone call, that they are set in such a way that phone calls can come in. The BJP would like to believe that line of thinking. How is it that an EVM can be tampered with? Who can tamper with it? Well, there are a number of ways, because the main brain of the electronic voting machine is the microcontroller, which is not produced in India. It's produced by a Japanese company. Let me tell you, Japan doesn't use electronic voting machines. Yet we are buying a microcontroller from a Japanese company, private company, from a country which doesn't use electronic voting machines. In fact, most countries of the world don't use electronic voting machines. Only Venezuela, Nigeria and India use it. These are what countries you can be happy in company of. And this microcontroller can be embedded into the electronic voting machine after its programming. And then it can be, there can be a password in it. There are many ways. Yes, mobile phones can do it. Yes. Wireless services can do it. A number of ways it can be done. And these have been documented in my book, which I published jointly with Mr. Chidambaram on electronic voting machines. Okay. So there is no question. It has been. That's why German Supreme Court very clearly said. So this case obviously will now go into court. All these points that you have mentioned perhaps now will be looked at in depth by the court. Is it actually possible to ring in literally a change into the EVM, or is it possible by changing the EVMs perhaps by a senior minister who can make a few phone calls? Is the election system and the EVM system actually foolproof? But also, sir, we would like to know from you is, besides this case, and we already know that Mr. Chidambaram is going to hang on, the Congress has come out and defended him, then what is it that is actually going to push him, give him the final push? You're saying your other cases, very crucial of them, you're just waiting for the vacation to end on the bench, and then of course they'll be getting onto those cases. Just take us through exactly how serious are the ramifications of those judgments when they will come out now in the next few weeks. When do we hear of them, and how serious could be really the consequences? Well, in the case, the Supreme Court, for example, upholds my prayer which I made to the trial court to make Mr. Chidambaram a co-accused with Raja. Yes. I don't think that there's any power in this earth which can prevent him from having to resign. That's one. Yes. Supposing it, in the case of the Aircel Maxis thing, it is found that Mr. Chidambaram actually committed fraud on the Foreign Investment Promotion Board resolution, and the son was on the take in this, which he facilitated by delaying the announcement, which is in fact an illegal announcement of foreign investment from Maxis. Now, the third one, which is even more serious because I might go to the international court for it, and that is Hashimpura and Meerut, where there was a genocide, and I have sufficient prima facie evidence now for an international court to take notice that it was Mr. Chidambaram as Minister of State of Home Affairs who gave the order. He went there and sat in Meerut to tell the officials this should be done. How can we believe that the police will take 42 youngsters from Muslim Mohalla and take them to the corner of a river and shoot them one by one and throw their bodies? That, I'm telling you, the Congress party will not be able to sustain, because that involves the minorities. And where you are talking about genocide, the International Court of Criminal Justice will definitely be ready to take this up, because for 25 years the government of India has done nothing. So there are enough cases. More are coming. This is not the end. Air India will come.
Final question then. Is this clearly the worst moment and the worst crisis that the government is looking at? Economic crisis, opposition crisis is the biggest crisis that the government is looking at within itself at this point of time, given so many charges against the Home Minister.
Short of a complete economic collapse coming within the next 4 months, this is the culmination. This is an augmentation of the crisis that began with the 25th March 2011 note issued by the Pranab Mukherjee Finance Ministry to the Prime Minister, when they had to go into a major clean-up effort, and that from then on has been adding, and every day it is making the UPA look more and more horrible.
Alright, clearly at this point of time, a person who's very happy with the recent developments of Subramanian Swamy, appreciate you joining us here on Headlines today.
And then finally, out of the blue, the returning officer issues a victory certificate without the knowledge of the other candidate. This has never happened in the history. And there are telephone records which show that telephone calls went from Delhi, and he was Home Minister at that time, Mr. Chidambaram. And telephone calls went from Chennai, which is the Mr. Karunanidhi as Chief Minister. And I don't know what kind of threats they must have issued to the returning officer to give this bogus victory certificate. That is the question. And all this is subject to criminal prosecution subsequently.
Just to be the devil,
being prima facie held guilty of fraud. And if the Prime Minister is going to defend him, then shame on the Prime Minister.
What kind of fraud did he commit? You've always spoken your mind. What is it that you are in the know of? What kind of electoral fraud?
You need the 29. I will tell you what I am in the know of, which will be proved in the trial. That is that Mr. Chidambaram lost on the first count. Then he asked for a second count. That too he lost. Third count, he produced another machine which they said was hiding somewhere. Genocide. So there are many cases coming against him. And I'm afraid the government will sink with him if they don't get rid of him.
Oh well, the government is definitely not letting go of him. You know, the kind of reactions, Mr. Swamy, that we are getting in from the government, Mr. Khurshid making it amply clear, there is no question, and I quote, there is no question of Mr. Chidambaram resigning because this is not a criminal case. In your opinion, what are the charges? Can they actually lead, what kind of finger pointing can you do against Mr. Chidambaram at this point of time, because they are hinging it on electoral technicalities? Subramanian Swamy now joining us live, a man, of course, who has actively gone ahead and pursued cases against the Home Minister, of course, the 2G case. Mr. Swamy, would you first and foremost say that this is a bigger blow than what you had hit him with over the 2G case in court?
Well, this has been on since 2009. Mine has been only on for last 4 months. And let the court summer vacations be over, and is not only on 2G, but on Aircel Maxis and Hashimpura. Electoral technicalities, fraud, coercion, a number of these 29 charges, of which 27 have been upheld as prima facie correct. These will lead to criminal prosecution immediately after. This is an election petition. His seat is going to be declared vacant, and after that the authorities in the state government headed by Mr. Jayalalitha, have the right immediately to register criminal cases against him. Here is a Home Minister